Today, we'll be focusing on a technology that has been waiting in the background of Microsoft Project for you to pick up and use. The tool is VBA in Microsoft Project. Let's take a little minute to see who we are. We are Advisicon, and here at Advisicon, we help organizations achieve greater impact by leveraging work management technologies to accomplish more with less. As work management consultants and technology specialists, our focus is on streamlining processes, improving systems, and achieving better outcomes. And that's why we're giving this webinar today, because with VBA, you're going to be able to accomplish more with less. All right, today's agenda, we're going to dive right into meeting Project VBA, and I'm assuming this is the first time you're seeing Project VBA, so we're going to dive right in. We're going to learn how to declare variables. We're going to look at some Project VBA code, and then we're going to pull this together in a working example, and then we'll give you some wrap-ups and some next steps. A little bit about myself. My name is David Oswald. I'm a project advisor and automation specialist here at Advisicon. I do have a background in engineering and manufacturing, worked on plant floors, and also worked in offices to automate things. I've have experience in data analysis and reporting, Power Automate, Power BI, a lot of the Microsoft stack. I also work with SharePoint, designing and administering SharePoint and project management tools. And little known fact about myself, I've visited all 48 of the contiguous United States, but I currently live in Georgia. All right, let's dive right in because this is a big topic. I'm going to speak fast, so listen fast, and let's see if we can get you up and going. If you've never used Project VBA before, let's start with the basics. What is VBA? VBA stands for Visual Basic for Application. And it's a programming language that's built into many of Microsoft Office's applications. You can think of it as the engine behind automation tools like Excel, Word, and in our case, Microsoft Project. VBA is simple yet powerful. It's designed to be easily understood, even if you're not a professional programmer, but at the same time, it is incredibly versatile. VBA is what we can consider a Turing-complete language, which means that given enough resources, it can theoretically solve any computational problem. This is huge when you think about the complex tasks we manage as project managers. Now let's talk about Project VBA. This refers to the implementation of VBA within Microsoft Project. It works the same way as VBA in the other Office programs like Excel and Word and PowerPoint, but it's specifically designed to handle tasks, projects, and resources that are unique to project management. So it's the same, but it's got additional built-in items. These allow you to manipulate tasks, adjust schedules, manage resources automatically. It's tailored to make managing your projects a lot easier and more efficient. All right, let's talk a little bit about why. Why would a project manager want to use VBA? We know that managing a project involves a lot of tasks that can eat up a lot of your time as you're doing project management. And this is where VBA comes in, making it easier to automate a lot of the repetitive tasks. Now, first of all, automation is a huge time saver. Imagine not having to manually update your schedule, reassign resources, or even generate certain reports every week. With VBA, you will be able to set up scripts to handle these things for you. You hit a button, and it's done, freeing up your time to focus on more important decisions. And if that's not enough, another big reason is accuracy. When you're doing things manually, there's always room for human error. Automating the processes through VBA helps ensure that your data is entered correctly and your calculations are consistent. This is especially useful when dealing with complex project schedules or financials, where even a small mistake can snowball into bigger mistakes. Another thing, and I kind of mentioned it, was custom reports and dashboards. And here's another area where VBA really shines. Instead of pulling reports that present that don't quite fit what you're looking for, you can create tailored reports that present the data exactly how you want it. It's perfect for recurring reports that you need to produce on a regular basis. VBA can do that for you automatically. And then another option, another item that I want to mention is integration. VBA allows you to integrate Microsoft Project with other tools like Excel or Word. For example, you can easily transfer project data from project into an Excel sheet, perform detailed analysis, or even create polished documents in Word without having to manually copy and paste data. VBA can handle that for you. And since VBA goes across all of the Microsoft Office suite, you can transfer your VBA knowledge over to Excel and Word and automate those things. For larger projects, automation with VBA becomes even more valuable. You can scale your management practices by automating those complex resource management allocations. You can use it to track down dependencies and monitor progress. And it can do it for you all automatically. You don't have to get bogged down in the details. So, in short, VBA lets you boost your productivity. Let's now take a look. I want to go into two main ways that I use VBA. And I'm hoping explaining these scenarios will get you excited about what you can do with VBA in your project files. Let's start with the most common scenario that many of you might already be familiar with, using VBA macros within the same file. In this case, the macro is like an in-house helper. It's designed to automate tasks within the project that you're working on. Calculations or formatting are just a few of the things that people use this to do. And it's inside the very document or project file that it's stored in. For example, in Microsoft Project, this could mean automating the creation of tasks, setting dependencies, or formatting your project plan, all within the project file you're working on. Now, this is super useful because you don't need to jump between files or worry about managing multiple documents. Everything happens within the contained environment. It's really like a toolkit sitting there waiting for you to use in your project to automate your tasks. Now, let's talk a little bit about another way that I tend to use Project VBA. And this is really the part where VBA really starts to shine. And it may be something that not everyone has considered using VBA macros for. And this is where you can control multiple files. Imagine you've got 10, 15 different project files. Each one is filled with data, timeline tasks, everything you're managing. Instead of opening each one and manually applying the same process or updating it manually, you can create a VBA macro. Project has the ability to open up each of the projects that you tell it to open, either from your PIWA or from a local stored data, and work on each file one at a time. It actually opens other files, applies the necessary changes. It can even close, save, and publish the file when it's done. For example, you could have a macro that opens all your monthly reports, runs a specific analysis, and then saves them all without having to lift a finger after hitting the run button. And this is a game changer for efficiency because instead of working file by file, VBA becomes your project management assistant across all the documents. If you have a change you want to make on all of your project files, you can do that in VBA and save yourself a lot of headache and time. If you've never thought about this before, don't worry, you're not alone. But once you start using it, and now that you've learned about it, you'll wonder how you ever managed without that. All right, on to some of the details, some of the basic details. Before you can start using Project VBA, we need to add the Developer tab to your menu. And that's where you'll have your development tools. And it is a development environment. Like I said, it's simple enough for you to get started and use and use efficiently without having to dive into all the details. So it is easy to use, but it is a full-blown development tool that as you learn more and more, you can do more and more with it. But we need to add it to the tab. So to do that, you go to File, Options, Customize Ribbon, and then you'll see in the right pane there an item for developer. You click that, and that's how you add the developer item to your menu. And you'll then from then on out, you'll see that developer option in your menu. And that's where we'll go. So that's how we'll get our code going and our code started. And then when you hit on the developer item, you see the developer item there, you will see some options. A couple that I want to point out. First is the record macro. A lot of people, when they first start out with Project VBA or any of the VBA tools across Microsoft Office suite, they'll start with record macro. There's something that they want to do that's repetitive, and so they'll record a macro. And basically, it's just like an old-time tape recorder where you click on it and it starts recording your actions, and it turns them into code for you. So if you click on record macro, it allows you to start clicking. You'll click your items and do your tasks. And then when you hit stop recording, it will write the code for you. As you can see in this example here, it creates this macro for you, and there's your code. It will create the code for you. Now that's good and all, but you still need to be able to understand and get in and see that macro. So let's move to the next item here, which is being able to go in and see your code. And here's another way to create code is with a blank slate. And so you can come in, click your developer button, then you can click Visual Basic. And this is usually where you'll go in to see all your macros, see all your VBA code. And I use the term macro and VBA code interchangeably. They're the same thing. But if you'll click Developer, Visual Basic, and then if you will find your particular project, let me click to the next screen here. You see it will have several items on the left. Find the project that you're working in, click on that, right click, and click Insert Module. And that will give you a blank slate for you to start doing your work, to start creating your macros and your VBA code. This is also how you would get into the code if you've done a record macro and be able to see that code that was created. If you do record a macro, it's always good to come in here, see the code, make sure it's what you want it to do, and clean it up. All right, and so if you come through here, go through and have a blank slate here, I want to point out that and I'm going to teach you your first piece of code. Your first code statement that I want you to learn is option explicit. It's an optional statement in VBA, but I encourage you to start every VBA code that you create with this line, because what that does is it forces you to declare all your variables in your code. Now, declaring variables is how a programmer tells the compiler what variables a program is going to use and what type of data is stored in them. In VBA, you do not have to explicitly declare variables. And if you don't declare them, then the VBA compiler makes assumptions about the data that's being stored. But this option explicit statement forces a programmer to declare all variables. And this is always the first line I put in any VBA code because I want all my variables to be declared. That's just good programming practice. All right, now let's dive into the exciting world of VBA with declaring variables. Let's learn how to do that. Declaring variables. We're going to create a quick example here and go over some of the basics of VBA and get us up and running with variables. But first, I want to talk about subroutines and functions. And this is not a course in programming, but it's kind of intended to open your eyes as a program manager. So I'm going to talk fast, and some of these concepts are easy to learn, but you may need to do a little additional study. So I've mentioned variables, which is simply a storage location for the data that your program's using. And you can see in this code at the top here where I'm declaring some variables using the dim statement. Dim means dimension, and it's saying I want to dimension this particular variable as a certain type of data. And we'll get into that a little bit in another slide. But this is where a variable is created, and this is where the data will be stored. And there's two additional concepts that I want you to be familiar with here that you can see in this code. And it's subroutines and functions. If you have any programming background, you're probably already familiar with these concepts, but both are essentially containers that hold your program code. And I've got on the screen here a subroutine and a function. Subroutines are the starting point for you to kick off running your code. And you can call one subroutine from another subroutine, or call one function from a subroutine or another function to continue running the code in a logical manner. So these containers let you group your code into logical parts that can be called when you need to. Subroutines and functions are similar, but functions are special in that they always return a value. This is why only subroutines can start code and running, and why functions can only be called by a subroutine or another function. And you can see in this example that I've put up here, where the function at the end of my function statement, I'm declaring what type of variable will be returned by that function. In this case, it's returning a string variable. So this code is an example of how that would work. All right, if that's not enough, let's look at some of the variables that you can declare. So we have numeric types of variables, we have string types of variables. There's also a variant type, which can hold any kind of data. And sometimes you need to do that. There's other types like booleans, dates, and objects. Objects are very important that are used to reference other objects. We'll see that in a moment. All right, let's dig into a little bit of Project VBA code. And like I said, this isn't a full programming language course. It's just going to kind of whet your appetite. But from these things, you should be able to dig in deeper and create your own programs. All right, let's talk a little bit about the if, then, else construct. And most people are familiar with this. If this, then this, else something else. In this case, if my age is greater than 18, then message box, which basically pops a message up on your screen, you are an adult. Else message box, you are a minor. As you can see, my age, it doesn't really say what it is, but let's assume we've declared that as a variable up above, and somehow the data of my age has been put in there. But this is the construct of an if-then-else statement. Starts with if, there's a logical interpretation in the middle, then the word then, followed by what's going to happen if that happens, and optional else. You can leave the else out if you don't have an else in your if-then-else. and then it's ended with an end if. That tells the compiler that I'm done with my if then else construct. Very important in programming and also VBA. All right, let's look at a for next statement. This is a also another programming technique, and this is what lets us iterate over things. So in this case, this says for inks equals 1 to 10. And then it says message box iteration ampersand inks. What this will give, and then the following line says next inks. If you run this, this runs in a loop for 10 times, 1 through 10, and it would print out in a little box iteration 1, iteration 2, iteration 3, iteration 4, etc., all the way to 10. So, and it just allows you to loop through things. This gives you power in your programming because that's what you want to do a lot of times, is do things over and over again over a certain range. All right, similar to the for next loop is the while loop. We have a do while x is less than 10, and then we're adding 1 to x. A do while loop is ended with the word loop, and it will loop until it's finished. There's also a do until construct, so you can look that up as well if you want. And let's, another one, I talked a little bit about objects, and so objects are part of a collection. And this one comes in very handy in project because a lot of the things we're working on will be with objects. And so this is a for each item in collection, next item. So this would, an item would be something like maybe a task or something like that. And so this lets you iterate over all of the items in a certain collection. I know that's kind of maybe nebulous to you right now and maybe not quite understanding, but just be aware that this is there and we're going to use this quite often. We will see this in some code in a minute. All right, let's pull all these parts together in a working example. I want to show a working example of what we want to do. All right, so we have a project here. We show a project, and our project is, and I'm going to set up the scenario for you. I have a project with a bunch of tasks with the same name that say obtain approval to proceed that occur, and these tasks, in our case, occur right before each milestone is set. So, and right now, we have a set duration for these tasks. If you look at the duration for these tasks, it's all 4 hours. We're giving ourselves 4 hours to obtain approval to proceed. Because, hey, it generally takes us that long to have the managers give their approval. However, we've just been informed that approval now needs to be obtained not only by our manager, but the customer as well. And they require a formal meeting that's going to take several days to coordinate. So this is going to affect our schedule quite a bit because we're going from 4 hours to something more. We need to bump this duration from 4 hours to 1 week. It's going to take us a week now to obtain approval to proceed. Now, of course, I can go through the entire schedule and make this update manually. But then if I did that, I couldn't show you how to do this with VBA. Plus, there's a lot of them, so I might miss some. Let's see how to do this in VBA, putting all of our pieces together. All right, to accomplish this, I've created code in the project. So right inside the project that we need to update, I've created code to do this. Let's look and see what it does. All right, the first line up here is option explicit. As I've said, this is optional, but I always include it because it forces me to declare all variables, which keeps me and you, if you follow that rule, out of trouble. Next is the subroutine declaration. And this line defines the sub-procedure, and we've named our sub-procedure update task duration info. Remember, we said that subgroup procedures are reusable blocks of code that can perform a specific task. After that is the dim statement there. That's what we talked about to declare a variable. This line declares a variable named update task, and it's of type task. Now, task is a type of variable that can be declared within a project, and it's used in an object like we had talked about. And it's going to be used to hold a reference to each task within the project. All right, now here next is the for each part of the code. We talked about for each, and that's the one I said might be a little strange to you. But if we break this down, this line, it iterates through each task in the active project.tasks collection. And you might just need to trust me on this a little bit, but if you see it here, update task for each update task, and that's our variable, in active project.tasks. So it's going to take the active project, which is the project we're working with, and it's going to iterate over every task in that project. Okay, so this is where the power starts, where I can go in and for every task in the project, I can do something. So let's hop to the next statement. It's an if statement. And if you look at that, we say if update task. Now remember, update task at this point in our code is the first task in the project. It says if update task dot summary, and there's a lot of different items under tasks. It'll be your job to go and figure out what they are and do a little research to figure out what you need. But I'm asking if the task is a summary task. And then I say, if the update task dot summary is summary, that says, hey, it's true, then I'm not going to do anything. My next line says do nothing. And if you see it's in green and it's preceded by a single quote, that's a comment in VBA. If you precede anything with a single quote in VBA, then it's a comment. It's not run, it's not anything. I like to put this here to say do nothing because it's telling me to do nothing. Now, I could have said, if not update task.summary, then do something. But I've always been taught that in programming, you should think on the positive and not the negative. So I always like to think positive. So I say, if update task.summary, yes, it's a summary task, then do nothing. And I put my work down in the else because it's easier for my brain to hold on to positives rather than negatives. That's why I have the else statement next. The next statement is else, and this is what's going to happen if it is not a summary task. So if it's not a summary task, then it's going to say, have another if statement. And this is where we want to check the name of the task that we're working on. Now, remember, we're iterating through each task in the project. So right now, if it gets to this part of the code, it shows us that it is not a summary task. And so we're going to check the update task.name. And this is the task that we're currently on. And it's going to check the name of that task. And that's another part of that object. So we look at the name and we say, if that name is equal to obtain approval to proceed. Remember, that's what we're looking for. That's because that's what's changed. Our lines say obtain approval to proceed. Then we're going to say update task and a lot of letters there after that. And if you look at the end of that next line where it says update task dot set field ID equals, let's follow that to the end. We're going to set that to 1W or 1 week. That's where I would have manually gone in and changed it from 4 hours to 1W. But I'm doing this in a programmatic manner so that it can do it automatically. Now, all of that in between there, and let's kind of dig into this a little bit. I'm going to leave it for an exercise for you to dig deeper into this, but just so that you understand what's happening. This is taking our update task, the current task that I'm on, and it's setting a field to a certain value. All that it's doing past that is figuring out which field to set. And there's field name to field constant. That's something that's built in, so I don't have to declare that anywhere. I just say set field ID equals field name to field constant, and then duration. That's the field that I want to set to 1W, 1 week. So that's setting the duration field to 1W. You can copy this into any code you create, that line, and you can change the word duration to another field that you want to find within there. It'll find it, and you can set it to something. Next lines are our end ifs, which ends our 2 if statements, and then next update task. So that line there, next update tasks, moves us to the next task, and it iterates through the lines. The last line I have there is a message box. I tend to put this at the end of my code. It just tells me that it's done. Sometimes if you run code and you don't have something showing that you're done, it'll finish and you didn't know it finished. And so I always add that, or tend to add that at the end. Then end sub ends the subroutine, and it's done. All right, what I want to do now is let me bring over this code. I want to see it in action. This is what we had, and as you can see, my obtain approval to proceed is set to 4 hours. All of these are set to 4 hours. I want to see my code. Let me bring my code over. And this is the code that we had written for that. Real quick, let me show you how to run code when you write code. This is my, when I go to Visual Basic, this is my Visual Basic window that it's brought up. Under here, I can hit this green button, and it will run the code that I'm currently in. If I select it in this code, if I hit this green button, it will run the subroutine that I'm currently selected in. I can break my code if it's running, and I can reset my code if I need to. So I'm going to get in this, and I'm going to hit run. And look, here's my line that came up done, which was my final line in the code. Let me click on OK, and that was my final line. Let's see if it did what we expected. It was expected to go through each task, find the name that said obtain approval to proceed, and change it to 1 week. And look, it did. It was just as if I went in and did it manually, and it changed everywhere that I had that. So that's some of the power of Microsoft Project VBA. All right, let's talk a little bit about now we did that example where we added that code and we ran it against our project, and that's kind of a simple use of VBA inside of one project. But imagine if you had this for every project in your PWA, and you wanted to update every project in this same manner. This is possible as well with VBA. I'm not going to go into the code in this webinar, but contact us here at Advisicon if that's something you need more information on. We are a teaching organization at our core, and we love to help people in any way possible. So I can, we can go into that if needs be. But the power of VBA to come in and make changes like we did here with that code to every one of your projects in your PWA, or certain projects in your PWA based on your needs. All right, let's wrap this up. I know this has been a lot of information coming at you fast and furious, and but hopefully this has given you some insight into maybe what Project VBA can do for you. And so let's just wrap this up. first of all, Project VBA is a powerful tool. There's built-in integration, there are programmatic controls that we talked about. And while VBA is, it's relatively easy to learn and get started, it does offer a powerful tool set for automating things for you. You can customize your solutions. You can be in control. You can do the automation yourself as a project manager and not have to count on somebody in an IT area to go in and do these things for you. You can actually take the power in your own hands and make changes with automation. Next steps, explore the VBA documentation. Delve deeper into it. Don't be afraid. Go in and try it on a local copy and see what happens. So you're not messing up your the one you're working with. Make a copy of your file and see what happens. Practice regularly. Practice your VBA skills and go in and learn more. There's so many areas that you can dive into. Experiment with different things. When you come up with something that you need done that's going to be repetitive, try it in VBA. Join online communities and do online searches of what you're going to do. There's plenty of other VBA developers out there, and so dig deep into that. But contact us here at Advisicon for specific project and programming help. We do this kind of work all the time for different people and teaching people and or helping them create the automations that they need. And just to wrap up, I just want to thank you again for joining us and watching. If you have any questions or need further clarification, don't hesitate to reach out. For additional learning resources, explore our online academy. We offer a variety of free trainings for project managers and others to enhance your skills. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next time.